By the time Zur admitted defeat, the officers had disappeared. Neither Wagner's deputy nor any other senior policeman answered phone calls. The French liaison officer, Captain Hector Ziegelmeier, appealed to his Russian counterpart to help clear the floor of the chamber. The Russian refused to act. It took 2 hours before the assembly meeting could begin, and, to an accompaniment of barracking from the gallery, it voted to uphold the Magistrat's decision that 2 currencies must circulate in the city. When the assembly members then tried to leave, the mob outside turned very nasty. It charged at the main entrance and blocked the way. Cyclists patrolled the other doors and shouted for reinforcements if anyone tried to get out. In the car park, thugs kicked and punched those caught making for their cars. Jeanette Wolf, an SPD representative, was called Judensau and beaten up, just as she had been in the 1930s before going to a concentration camp. She recognized the reincarnation of the SA. Those stuck inside the building could get no police escort. When Friedensburg finally got through on the phone to Wagner and shouted, "My life is threatened," Wagner was unmoved. "It's not so important, don't be so afraid." It was late at night before Zur, Friedensburg, and a handful of others could slip out, thanks to the help of an SPD police officer and 5 men. And in the early minutes of 24 June, the Russians stopped all rail traffic at Marienborn and cut the supply of electricity from eastern power stations to the western sectors. There was no hope now that this was the passing whim of individuals. The SMA officially announced that technical difficulties on the railways meant that they would be closed for a long period. Chronic fuel shortages prevented resumption of electricity. West Berlin had stocks of food for roughly 36 days and enough coal for 45. No more would be allowed in by the Soviet authorities. Nothing could move to or from the western sectors except by air. But the people of Berlin demonstrated on 24 June that they were not afraid, that they knew the bully boys of old had stood up to the Nazis in the past and would stand by their Magistrat and Assembly now. 50,000 of them packed into the Hertha Stadium in the French sector, and 20,000 more crowded the street outside. They listened to a long, calm, reasoned address by Reuter in which he welcomed Western currency reform, explained why the difference between the Eastern and Western economic systems made unified currency impossible, and suggested that Russian sanctions and yesterday's mob proved that the real issue was not currency but Berlin itself. The crowd cheered when he called on the world to help the Berliners in the decisive phase of the fight for freedom. How could the Western powers possibly resist such an appeal or be unmoved by such courage?